can do it all on this show.
Yeah, well, here we go.
All
We're
right.
recording, so we'll have fun.
Sounds good. All righty. Let's see. We'll start this up and the audio side.
I've got a
Here we go.
topic that will lead us into the data. So I'm going to bring up something
Oh,
and ask you
perfect.
another question that you don't know about. And this is more of an
Oh,
overview
I love
question
that.
about research and
You
some
know I
things.
enjoy that.
I
You
know you're
know
going to
I
like it.
enjoy love that
And I
kind
didn't
of
know if
stuff,
you wanted
man.
to do some of the levity that is the goofiness that you and I have been sharing on Twitter with all the Chiefs for, and I mean it's just been nutty crazy. So I thought we might hit that, but then I've got a question or a topic for us to talk about. Then we can slide into the data, and then I wanted, and again maybe after show, I had a question about my next slice of research on the Bush factor database.
Ooh,
So
very good.
that's kind of what I want to do. If you've
Very
got
good.
anything on your data or anything you want to bring up, I'm cool too. But that's just what I was
All
thinking
right.
about in my
That
head.
sounds like a strategy. Here we go.
Okay.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together, and if they're not paid off by fossil fuel or the Climate Change Institute or the Fumble Ruski Institute, you know the science is going to be honest, and so you know you're going to make you a better fantasy football player because fantasy football, folks, it's a stat driven game. And using the scientific method just means that we are going to use statistics in a smart way to guide us to the answer. Joining me as he does each and every week, he is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor emeritus. It's John Bush. And John, I'm telling you, I'm feeling really, really good today because my referee bribe worked well.
Yeah. I thought we would share some funnies on Twitter. Apparently, there's a boycott brewing. Nobody's going to
Oh,
watch the
yeah.
game because they're angry at the officials or the rigging of the games now, and lots of pros and cons about that. And we've shared funnies that we've seen on Twitter, and all I say is, Dennis, if there is rigging, I'm ready for my Saints to kind of get in line. It's about time for us to cycle back and get the rig in our favor. Okay, it would be joyous to see the Saints win the NFC South and crush the Dirty Birds, those silly Panthers, and those scheming Buccaneers. I would love for them to be thoroughly spanked by the referee rigging that should work in the Saints' favor whenever that's coming up. I want to say, Dennis, put me in line for the bribery fund. I'm ready for the Saints to jump on that carousel. It's been way too long for us. And so, as a Saints fan, I'm kind of used to being beat down and whatnot. Not used to hearing about the Saints, or everybody's rigging in the Saints' favor. We don't know what that is. So we missed out. So we're thinking we're due, right? The coin flip has been flipping too many times against the Saints. It's time for us to win a few flips here or some of the rigging. But the Chiefs are in the spotlight, Dennis. Your Chiefs. I know it got you out of a speeding ticket since the law
Oh, yeah.
enforcement realizes that if you're a Chiefs fan, everything breaks in your favor, so you can get out of jail free. Must be nice. If I had a Saints uniform, in Texas, they'd put me in the pokey. I only wear my lucky Saints jacket. The appropriate times there, Dennis, because it's we don't have the Chiefs factor that as a Saints fan we don't get that. Now in New Orleans, you wear it and you get a little extra hot sauce in your gumbo, or an extra beignet, or a little extra on your frog legs or whatever you ordered. So you get good stuff down there. But other than that, best to keep your Saints fandom quiet. But the Chiefs, on the other hand, man, everything's working in y'all's favor.
Yeah, and I'm amazed because I know the referees are on our
Well, I
side
can tell
because why wouldn't
Yeah, Mo,
wouldn't they?
Larry, and Curly. I know you know them.
Yeah, they're all on our side, and
Yeah,
the rigging is in, and we know that. I mean,
yeah,
anybody with eyeballs can see that. Just ask any Bills fans;
yeah,
they will confirm that for you. But I'm just amazed this week at how widespread the
yeah.
conspiracy is, because I got out of my ticket. I was speeding. I
Hmm.
even admitted to the officer, "Oh my goodness, I forgot to slow down. I know it slows down to 30 here. I was still going 40." He says, "No problem, Chiefs fan. You get a pass." But then the next day, Professor, I didn't even tell you about this one yet because I didn't
Uh-oh.
post this on X because I don't want everybody to find out.
Yeah.
Of course, and now I'm telling you on the podcast, so I'm defeating the purpose of that. Went to the casino,
Oh
okay,
no.
and I was playing roulette.
And you bet on the Chiefs red.
Red,
Yeah,
seven
red.
straight,
Yeah,
7 straight times. And then here's the thing.
yeah,
As the thing was spinning and it was starting to slow down,
yeah,
the guy said, "Oh, you're wearing your Chiefs shirt. You get to take your bet back."
yeah, yeah.
And sure enough, it was black.
Yeah, well, take it
So
back.
so he let me take my bet back at the last second, right before the ball fell, because he knew it was going black.
Yeah, that's
And then
nice.
five more red bets.
Yeah,
He says, "Sir, it's safe to bet now."
yeah, it's safe to bet.
And so so even the rigged roulette wheel
New.
is letting me know what's going on. He said, as long as you don't bet more than $15. Apparently there's a Mahomes thing at the casino. I got to bet
Okay.
15.
Yeah,
I said,
15.
"Can I bet 87?" And he said,
No,
"No, you
no.
can only bet 15." I'm like, "Okay, I'll take my
Okay.
15. I'll take my profit." But yeah, it's amazing what is going on. And then, I'm yesterday. So yesterday I go out for lunch. Okay, stop by my favorite Mexican place, and I picked up the red sauce to put a little red sauce on.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, bells and whistles going off because, of
yeah,
course, I got my Chiefs hat with me.
yeah.
Wearing my Chiefs gear. You always wear your Chiefs gear now because the
Oh,
fix is in.
definitely.
And all of a sudden they came out and they said, "Senor, your lunch it is free. You're Chiefs fan. You use red sauce. It's free." So I got a free lunch yesterday for
Dennis,
being a Chiefs fan.
that sad accent.
It was
I'd
terrible.
have to take your half an enchilada back here. That was weak.
It was very weak, very
That
weak.
was
But
weak.
it was,
Okay, continue.
what can I say? But yeah, it's just everything that happens now.
Yeah, it's all
It's
Chiefs.
amazing.
Yeah,
It's all Chiefs. So and I found out something else that I didn't know because
yeah,
I was talking to some fellow Chiefs fans on Twitter/X.
yeah.
Did you know that I get a lower fee for the referee fixing fund than a newer, younger fan who did not suffer for as many years?
I see. It's a tiered level, right?
It's a tiered level. My $200 payment
Yeah.
went in today for the Super Bowl, but I'm so excited about how well this is all working out. I tipped them an extra $75.
Nice. Nice.
So look for at least one or two roughing the passer calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first down. I mean, here's the thing that you don't realize if you're a
Okay.
Bills fan.
Okay.
And it's in the rules. It's in the
It's
NFL
in
rule
the
book.
rule.
If you
It's in the rule
go
book.
to NFL.com and you look up the rule book,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's rule section 15, paragraph 87. They
Yeah.
even like coded it for us.
Yeah.
Did you know that a first down for any other team
Yeah.
is 10.5 yards. It
Yes,
this
the Bills found that out. Yeah,
it's 10.5 yards for
yeah,
other teams. It's only 10 yards for the Chiefs. I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, yeah.
They have special sticks. So during the Super
Special
Bowl,
sticks. Yeah, yeah,
during the Super Bowl, watch
yeah.
very closely if they show a sideline shot
The
right after the
special
first down.
sticks that
Right
stretch
after,
an extra
right
half a
after,
yard.
yeah,
Yeah, they
just
stretch.
after the change of possession,
Yeah,
you'll see them run out the
with this.
opposing sticks and then the Chiefs
Well, I
sticks.
thought the sticks were inflatable, and they deflated the sticks so they make them
It's
razor
possible.
thin,
Yeah,
right? Very thin, and then
yeah,
very thick when the Bills had it, right? So it became just
yeah.
almost a fence post, and you had to get past the fence post
Extra
versus a pool
extra
cue.
links.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
extra.
Yeah, just extra
Well,
links.
Dennis, I'm gonna
But you can see it.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you that what's going on for New Orleans fans there, and you may not know this, but in the old days, before the Saints were a football team in New Orleans, they had they had I guess a voodoo team or something. Anyway, the when they would have a bad season, all the fans would collect their tears in these tear jars, and
Oh,
apparently
very
you put
nice.
it into the voodoo makings that the next year the team the Saints voodoo team would win. So if you don't believe me, I saw Antiques Roadshow. They had an antique tear jar, Dennis, that they would give out at funerals,
Oh,
and you would cry. And so it
wow.
works the same thing when the Saints lose. We collect tears, and the idea is when there's enough tears collected, then we get all the rigging. So that is going on. That's our double secret. You got to have the secret knock to load into the big vat of tears that the Saints fans have been saving up. And we've been crying a lot of tears a lot of times. And see, last year, to get lots of tears, we made sure the first couple games we were just superior and everybody was talking the Saints are going to the Super Bowl, and then the rugs pulled out. Well, you get extra tears because of that. 5, 6, 7 games, and our quarterback's hurt, and
Oh,
so forth.
yeah.
So it just
Ooh.
overflowing. The swamps were overflowing with Saints tears. So anyway, that's I
Well,
understand. I'm glad Twitter is policing all the rigging going on, and we'll need them on the rules committee to make sure it's better next year. But I guess the rig is in. Chiefs will have their three-peat. And only thing I can say, I had a parlay, and my Mr. Kelsey did get me enough yards, Dennis.
oh, yeah.
I had a nice parlay building, and he was the weakest link, Dennis. Worthy did his job. Shakir did his job. Everybody did their job except Kelsey. So too much music videos and partying or something. So that was sad. So I am not going to include him. Probably, they're zigging and zagging me, but in my Super Bowl parlay, my $2 shot, I'm not going to have Kelsey in there, for yards. I'm maybe a touchdown because he doesn't need many yards for that, but I was really disappointed. He cost me some money, so that's sad. It's extra sad.
Yeah, we just didn't get much out of him. He was saving all his strength for
I
the
get,
after the game
yeah,
dancing, I
yeah, the
guess.
dance and the
But
karaoke, I guess. Yeah.
now, now I do want to point out one thing
Oh,
about Mr. Travis Kelsey,
okay.
because I have seen so many people that have been saying the reason I think Gronk is a
Mhm.
better tight end than Kelsey is because Gronk was a better blocker. On two of the touchdowns
Mhm.
last week, did you see Kelsey out there leading the way? He
Yeah.
he laid out a guy So Kelsey could get around the end and get that one touchdown. And then the second Mahomes touchdown where he ran, like they ran that quarterback sweep that the Bills defender said, we haven't seen this in the tape.
Mhm.
Well, of course not. He doesn't run in the regular season. He only runs when he has to. But Kelsey was out leading the way on that as well. And he also had a good block on the Pirine play to help get him out. He also set a nice like fake pick on the Worthy catch. I mean, he he didn't have much in the way of yardage and catches.
Mhm.
He had a big impact on that game uh, because Buffalo's keying on him, and he took players out, and he had a great block. That was one of the best games blocking I've seen from Kelsey in a long, long time. Just shows the guy is a complete ball player.
Mhm. Uh, I was sitting there looking at my database on Kelsey, and you're gonna laugh, but what was Gronk's first name?
Uh, Rob Gronkowski.
Okay. Well, then I've got the Bush factor data, Dennis. I can give you the average.
Ooh,
I've got Kelsey's number. Let's see. There he is. And I will tell you that Kelsey would have a better Bush number than Gronk.
I can believe that. I can believe it.
Kelsey was averaging 6 weeks in the top 48. Gronk only averaged
Wow.
five. Only averaged five in the top 48. So there you go. Now to say, Dennis, it's you have to go far and wide to get anybody closer. Uh,
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking, and I'm having a hard time finding anybody who would be anywhere near some of those guys, and I'm not seeing it. So I'll have the total numbers from 2013, and Kittle actually uh, is a 4.8, not bad compared, almost,
No,
but Gronk was better. But I'm just, so I can give an overview if anybody's curious, and that may be something for Dynasty and again, I'm going to be able to look year to year, Dennis, and I'm having a hard time. I'm looking at Antonio Gates. No, not even close. Now,
no,
Gates,
no.
if you throw at his last 2 seasons, nope, nope. Kelsey, in my database, may be the best, Dennis, as far as this metric, being in the top 48
And
weekly.
he probably had a couple of years that were closer to eights
Yeah, oh yeah.
on your
Yeah,
Bush
yeah,
number.
yeah, yeah. So let's look here. Yeah, so Travis Kelsey, Dennis, we had an 11 and a 10, 7,
Wow,
7, 10, 7, 11. Last 2 years have been some of his
wow.
worst, 4 and 5. But 2016, so 2014 was 3, 2, 2016, 6, 7, 7, 6, 10, 7, 11, 2023, 4, 2024, 5. So he has dropped down big time. But boy, if you just look at his peak, if we did that, Dennis, we're talking almost 8 average weeks out of
Wow.
17, 18.
Wow.
Dennis, that's almost half the time this man is helping your team big time. That is neat. That is a
And
neat,
at that
yeah.
and at that time that was 16 game seasons. So he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
50% of the games. That's insane.
he's nice, Dennis. Nice numbers. It's good historically. It's going to be enjoy. I'm going to enjoy this database, and so I can ask that about all the different ones, Dennis. And once I get it all thing, I'm going to send you a copy here, and I probably should have shared this with folks here. I'll just show you.
And, and here's the cool thing, folks. This is the Bush number. If you're new to the show and you haven't seen this data yet,
Yeah.
this is just placement among all players at all positions.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So
When
making
I
the
say
top
top 48,
48,
that's everybody. Everybody.
that's a huge deal
And so,
because
Dennis, that first column is the top 48 right here. I've got it.
wow.
So I'm showing the visual, and then Rob, I'll just show Gronkowski here, and here it is, right here. So his
So his
average was a
best
5,
year was an 8,
was an 8.
7.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that's pretty
Kelsey
crazy that
had a
his
10 and
best
an
2 years,
11,
8 and
Dennis,
7.
and 3 sevens.
Wow.
So if you ask the question, how many seasons above 7 or 7 or above, Gronk would have been a 2, Kelsey would have been about a 6. Wow. And I don't think there's
Wow.
any tie. Yeah, look, 7, 7, 10, 7, 11. That's just
And I will
incredible.
guarantee that that's pretty close to what a top wide receiver finishes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
That's
it's
incredible.
very,
That's
yeah. So
absolutely incredible.
this database is really interesting, Dennis, and I'm going to be looking forward to teasing out that. So let's step back. I've got a uh, question for you, and maybe just whatnot on what what do you think, or what are you going to be doing, say, in the next couple months, as far as how are you going to approach your database and your analysis? Because people, this is just an overview. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, but I was just wanted to hear what you're going to do in general. I mean, you're not signing in blood to do anything, but just so people can hear, you know, what you're thinking. Let's say, February, March, April maybe, but just an early part of the fun preseason that we have. What are you thinking for
So the
your data analysis?
so the first thing I'm doing is putting a preliminary cheat sheet together for
Mm-hmm.
2025.
Mm-hmm.
And that will show the updated data, all QC'd, all, it will be clean data for the last 3 seasons
Uh-huh.
for my main 3 metrics. So that's upside value,
Mm-hmm.
that is MVP, and it's also my best index.
Mm-hmm.
So that data, it just needs to finish being compiled. I'm adding the 2022 year and the 22-23 metric because
Mm-hmm.
I grade them both in 2-year increments and then in single year increments. Once that data is done, I'll add the age of the players and contract status so I can start getting an idea on what kind of an impact a player leaving and a player arriving will do to that team. So that should be done probably this weekend. And then my next study that I am going to look at is the question is, were injuries worse this year versus other years? So I'm going to grade games missed, and I'm going to look at, how many less than full games. So if a player went out there and played 5 snaps, I'm counting that as a missed game because he
Uh-huh.
didn't compete in a full game. So I'm going to look at full games missed by ADP. Did we see more injuries among the top 5, the top 10 at each position this year, the top 20, the top 30? Was it just an unusual year? Well, the only way you know that is to go back in time and grade those players. And I'm going to do at least 6 years of looking back at the data
Mhm.
and see, hey, did we miss more games? Was a particular position missed more often? I have all the data, so I might
Mhm.
as well put it to use to look at those situations, because I think there's going to be a lot of overreacting in drafts next year,
Mhm.
because we had some wide receivers that did not finish the year. They did not play a complete season. Are we going to see, and we had some running backs that just crushed it this year. Are we going to see more running backs picked early than wide receivers? Because as you know, my better than zero doesn't care what position you draft early in the draft. It wants the best value
Mhm.
in those first 3, 4 rounds. And if I end up taking my first 4 picks as wide receivers because that's the best value, that's fine. It means that people were too heavy on running backs. And I'll go shopping for the value. And my better than zero strategy of having more running backs on my roster than the average team will pay off, especially late in the season. I'll have options. So that's one of the studies that I plan on doing, is looking at injuries, because I want to see, was this unusual or was this a typical year and we just have some sort of a recency bias over what we saw? Because my study of ADP and my study of MVP data, so player value, has shown that we really have the same number of elite wide receivers and running backs most season. It might vary by one, but drafting wise, we go 7 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 8 running backs, 4 wide receivers, or vice versa. From year to year, our ADP shifts more than reality shifts. And the key is, I want the best values that are out there. I don't care about the position. I'll make the right picks at key points. I know I'll pick up some value at running back. I always do.
Mhm.
So I won't worry, and I'll have value at wide receiver later in the draft. How about Chris Godwin last year, Rashee Rice? I mean, we were all over. Mike Evans was a huge value
Mhm.
versus ADP last year. Those are the kinds of studies I like to do, because I like to see if I can predict where the opening ADPs might be early in the draft season, so I know how to react to that, which is take the value.
That's nice. That's nice. Okay. So what I'm going to do is my approach on my databases is going to look top down. I've talked about this a
Yep.
lot, and I know it sounds like a lot of work, but if for me to break down a system that you don't know the connections, right? So I'm assuming that I don't know any connections and I'm just going to try to explore where the data takes me, right? I'm not going in with an idea and trying to figure out data support that, right? I'm not anti-science. That's what I think we bark about. That's not what we want to do.
Yes.
So the top down allows me to drill into the data. And so I'll share an example and then I'll show you some actual data here. So let me share. And so, Dennis, can you see everything in this? Can you see at the
Yes.
top? Okay.
Yep.
So my database is year split, player, position, team, week, season split, PPR, PPR points, top, mid, and bottom. The sector slice from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, etc., 20 to 30. The weekly rank from 1 to 2 or 300, whatever it goes to, and the sector in 12s. So the top 12 of the week, 13 to 24. And then the slices by twos. So 1 to 24. So I have sectors by 12s, then 24s, and then here is by 48s or by fours. So I've sliced the PPR into different fragments. So Dennis, so I'm going to split the years from 2013 to 19 and 2020 to 24. So I'm asking about, has there been any main changes? The season slice, first six, next six, the last six or so, five or six. Is there something going on early, mid, or late? In other words, do running backs wear out, or does something else go
Oh
on?
yeah.
Are there players that come on later or earlier? That's how I look at it that way. So right now, this is the database I built. And then you make a pivot table and you start digging into the different sectors. But you start out very, how can I say, very simple. Like you could look at average PPR points scored by year. That's it. Not worried about positions or anything. Just okay, what's the average? That kind of thing. And then you can go from there. And then you can add positions. Then you can add early, middle, late of the seasons. I mean, you can start teasing out a lot of data. So when I say top down, the trick is you build your databases with enough slices, splits, whatever you want to call it, so you can burrow down deep and start cutting with the idea the thinner the slice, the less samples you have, and then it gets a little risky. In other words, I don't want to risk hundreds of dollars or 35 or whatever on five examples, over 10 years. At some point it's too thin, Dennis. I know you want to slice. I've told this a lot. Slice the pumpkin pie so thin your in-laws don't come back, but you can't do that, Dennis. You got to give them a little slice. But anyway, you can cut it, believe it or not, too thin, and then you just get lost in the weeds at that point. So there's this fine line. But I don't define that, Dennis. I don't go into exploring with some type of preconceived idea. I just want to look at all the different metrics and just kind of, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that or this. And that leads to some other thinking. And maybe it says, maybe I need to add some more data to this. I think ADP would be a really interesting one. That may be I don't know if, and I'm going to send it to Dennis. He may be able to look at, you may be able to merge that in as well, but somehow uh, do that. So every database that I build is going to have this process. Let's call it the professor's process. So there's probably a lot that I won't be able to use, or there'll be aspects that are only be important in season. Some may be very important for dynasty. Some may be very critical for best ball. Some may be critical for drafting. Some may be critical in season kind of thing. So right now I'm not defining anything. I'm not going to hunt to prove that Jalen Hurts, should be the number one quarterback for next year. That, I want to let the data guide me and tell me what it tells me. And then I can decide how to deal with that, right? Then I think about things, look at the variation, look at aspects of the data. That's why I like to look at the different slices and just kind of see. I mean, I suspect there are players that can be really good or really sucky, right? We've always kind of had these spiky players for best ball. Tyler Lockett's a great example, that over the in historical terms, that he would just have 3 or 4 good weeks and then disappear. And he was more of a best ball choice some years. Other years maybe not. So it's important to explore, but you can't limit yourself, Dennis. So that's why I'm going to get some depth here. But I just wanted to bring this up to show people the focus here. But to me, first thing people should do is build their database and make it expandable. If you find you need to add data, it's not hard, and make it easier on yourself. You're saying, well, this must have taken some time. Yeah, let's see. I've been doing this for about 3 weeks, Dennis, and I had the data from 2013 to 24, and I was able to put it all together and added the slices and whatnot. So I'm just today was really, I mean, I did a little bit last week. I was just playing around, but I've got some actual data to talk about here today. So I'm gonna stop here. So what you think?
Yeah, first of all, great advice because you need to build your database in such a way that you can do two things with it, really. One is it needs to be built in such a way so it's easy to add the next year's data to it.
Yes,
And that's the way you've done it. It's very simple to do that
yes,
and incorporate other things into the mix, like
yes. ADP and
ADP or
whatnot. Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
It's always easier to add another category than to start out with something so restrictive that it doesn't give you any flexibility. Uh, I like this approach because what you end up having whenever you're doing a data study, you might have a hypothesis or you might not. And it's okay to go into the building of a database with no even preconceived notion of a guess. Like a hypothesis is just an educated guess.
yes,
It's the I've seen enough to think that this is the relationship, but you don't let your preconceived notion or your educated guess or your hypothesis, whatever you want to call it, you don't let that be the driving factor.
mm-hmm.
You let the data unravel the mystery for you. For instance, I think that we react in the way we draft from year to year based on what happened the year before. I think we're a very recency bias people. I think we are wired for that. We see it all season long with the people that are putting big fab budget bets on the guy that scored 2 touchdowns on 2 catches the previous week, even if he only played 12% of the offensive snaps. If he scored 16 points, by golly, we want him on our team, even though he's only going to play 12% snaps going forward, and he's probably not going to do much. But by golly, we're going to bid on that guy because he had a big points week the week before. So I think we are in fantasy football. I think the consensus is wired to have a big recency bias mentality. And maybe that's human nature. I don't know. But what I do know is that if you check a hypothesis, against data and do it honestly, you'll get a positive result. It may not even be the result you thought you were going to get. So my hypothesis on my injury thing, I think we had more lost games this year. Once I study the data, if I get a confirmation that that is what happened, we lost more games at a certain position at a certain ADP level than we usually do. Now, all of a sudden, going into next year, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's just going to regress to a normal amount, I'm not going to change my pattern to what I'm doing. But if I see a trend that looks like it's been increasing since we switched to 17 game season, then maybe I'll react to that data in a different way. But you don't know where the data is going to lead you until you build a great database. And once you have that database, you can check on a lot of different things. For instance, you can look at the success of your teams from this previous season and see, okay, I had a winning team with these guys on my team from last year. What was their top 48 score using the Bush number? If that was low, then maybe we're not so concerned about that Bush number going forward, or maybe 48 is the wrong slice.
Yeah, that's the
but if all of a sudden we're looking and we see that our average team of starters, our best starting lineup, is averaging 6 or more on the Bush number, whatever it ends up being, and our worst teams are lower, all of a sudden we know that top 48 slice is a valuable piece of information. Now we can go shopping for those players, especially early in a draft.
Yes.
Early in a draft, I want to avoid as many landmines as I can. That's why, even though I said I expect a much bigger year out of guys like Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, I'm not drafting them at their ADP, because at their ADP, I'm going to have to get 40 to 60% increase in their weekly value. And while I think they can get there, I'm not drafting guys at their ceiling. I want to draft guys closer to their floor. And then if they do well, like Chris Godwin's a classic example. Did we think that he was going to have one of the greatest years until he got hurt of any wide receiver? Because he was on a pace. If you look at his weekly values, no matter what metric you use, in my best index, he was finishing ahead of a lot of guys that played a full season, and he played 8 games. So we didn't expect that. But what we expected was his ADP, where he was being drafted, was well below his floor. So even if he just had an average Chris Godwin year, he was a huge value to have on our team. Those are the kind of players you want. And I think this Bush number is really going to do well at identifying those guys that had big seasons. And here's the thing. If you look at a guy, look at a player X, I'm not even going to put a name to him, and he's a 6. He's 6 weeks a year in the top 48 every single year that he's been in the league. 5 seasons, 5 averaging 6. He's a solid player. Now, the final year of your study, this year, 2024, he was a 10. Are we going to forecast a 10 for him in future seasons? Or are we going to say, you know what? Maybe he just had a career year. Maybe he is going to regress back to that 6, which he did the previous 5 years. Or we're going to look at him and say, hey, maybe it's a player like Saquon Barkley, where the team was holding him back. And now all of a sudden, this great player is on a great offense and he produces. But having your Bush number the way you do, you'll be able to see if that top 48 is the right slicer. Is it top 72? Is it top 24? I don't know what the answer is yet. But you built the database in such a way that you can test all the variables and you can see which makes more sense. And you'll know what the right number is. Maybe it's even saying, okay, if we draft a guy in the top 3 or 4 rounds, I want him to be in the upper third of that top 24 slice. And I want him to be way up there in top 48. You're going to know once you start playing with this data and you do data tests on it, you will know exactly what the right formula is at different levels of ADP.
And so the downside of all this is it's very possible you'll put a lot of effort into something, tracking something down, and it's just like, nope, nothing. So there is, I guess, a personality. If you are somebody that's got to, want the results quick, I think winning at fantasy football is harder if you don't have patience and you want your, everything now. I think in horse racing, I think in any kind of gambling, if you want it now, you're not going to be as ready to take advantage of things if you're more of a delayed gratification person. So there's some psych to this, Dennis, and you've got to build and put effort and time and hours in January, February, March, so that in August you can collect, right? Think about it. We're going to make serious decisions way in the future, but we're building the foundations now. And you've got to be able to get excited about nerdy data, numbers. It's got to excite you. And if that doesn't excite you, it's going to be harder for you to make the transition to win. If you know, and so I think there are some psych components, and I have done some lessons on the psych side of things in my videos that are out there. And I was kind of getting off tangent. I know it's hard to believe, but I started thinking, I said, well, maybe I should gather those, you know, understanding concepts like the psych side of fantasy football, or thinking fast versus slow, and lots of these biases. And then I started thinking, well, if I put it all out there, right? If I chop the wood, am I doing my students any favors? They're going to expect it all to be ready for them. And they just, the car's warmed up, the heater's done, it's defrosted, everything's ready, the sidewalk's shoveled, Dennis. And they don't appreciate if you have to do it all yourself. So I think I'm not going about 400 and something movies, and we're going to have more, folks. Probably going to add about 50 to 100. Who knows? I'm going to get crazy in the next couple of months. And I think I'm just going to make you hunt for it. So do you want it or not? If you're the kind of person that wants to buy some site that's promising, here's the tip sheet, come by me, the gold money tip sheet. Dennis and I went to horse racing, handicapping for a long time. You walk in that door, had 20 winners yesterday, and Big Red, and well, everybody wants that tip sheet. Dennis, if it was really the secret to success, why would anybody buy any more? Just buy the one tip sheet that's the big money winner, and then everybody would bet the same thing. But in pari-mutuel, everybody would lose, right? So uh, I'm not going to spoon feed you guys, and I would rather spend my time playing in the data because that's what I like to do. So I'm deliberately, and again, Dennis, that's probably why ESPN will never hire me, and that's fine. Hire somebody else. But I don't believe it is good for students to have the wood already chopped. They need to learn how to get the axe, sharpen it, find the right tree, learn how to cut it, and bring it back, and then build your fire. And I've done some of it. I made the movie, but I got 400 something. I don't even know how many I got. 450. I don't remember. And it's there somewhere, and you need to spend a little time digging for it if you want it. If you don't want it, you're probably not even listening, Dennis. The two or three that are listening right now. I got to give them applause. Thanks for listening. I mean, can you imagine in January, and a lot of people, your league mates are not even going to wake up from their hangovers to about
No.
the night of the draft. And like I said, that's the time to buy them all a drink. If it's a live draft, come on, boys, drink up. And again, my trick is you get your Crown Royal bottle, fill it with the old Crow or the old Granddad, the old cheap whiskey, right? But hey, Crown Royal, drink up, boy. They're not going to know after a couple shots. This is not Crown Royal. They're not going to care. Drink up, boys. Drink up. So everybody drinks there. And so that's what you do. You go to the bottom of the shelf, Dennis. Not the top shelf, but we're talking the old Crow. It's what the guys that are hanging in the street, the street entrepreneurs, that's what they drink. The old Crow, the old Granddad, or just the generic whiskey, right? Just the generic whiskey, right? That's what's at the bottom of the barrel. That little wood fibers, who knows what's in there. Not no worms or anything. It's who knows what's in the whiskey. And that's what you fill up with Crown Royal or your Johnny Walker or something. That's why I save all those bottles. I got my Johnny Walker Blue, Dennis. It has a little number, and it's given once a year to the top sellers of Johnny Walker, and they would reward that. And I had a professor friend of mine. He's a fern expert. Can you imagine spending your life studying ferns?
Oh, wow.
But he knew some bar in Florida, and I guess somehow he got a hold, and we actually consumed it, and I kept the bottle, probably last for 20 years, and it's Johnny Walker Blue. And I don't think you'll find many Johnny Walker Blues whiskey bottles out there, but I got one, so I'm just gonna get the old Crow, put it in there, Dennis. If I ever had a in draft, live draft. Drink up, boys, drink up. Good whiskey. You pick better with this whiskey. Anyway, Dennis, I'm not going to show them where it's at. It's there, and you've got to learn. Put your effort in. And I have more fun playing in the data. That's what I'd rather do than try to organize everything. And that's why Dennis will be much more famous than me if they ever figure out what we're doing. Problem, Dennis is hanging around with me. I'm the old anchor around Dennis's neck here. When Dennis goes swimming in the ocean, he has to put his lucky ham on the chain and swim out there. At least that's what Tim Conway told Harvey Korman. I don't know if you ever seen that skit. He walks in, they were doing the Jaws, and he walks in with this giant ham on a chain. And Harvey Korman, he didn't tell Harvey. Harvey looks up at him, and he he knew it was going to be funny. He said, "What's that?" And Tim Conway, "That's my lucky ham. I always swim with it, hunting for sharks." So Tim Conway wore his lucky ham, and that's what I think I am, Dennis. I'm your lucky ham, and I'm the one, dragging you down at the bottom when you're shark hunting. So just, you think about it, you want to hang with Dr. Bush here. He's the human anchor. That's me. Lucky ham.
Well, all now that is funny, but here's the thing that I had. I did have some folks when I was discussing MVP and all this stuff. I had some folks say, "Why did you bother?
Yep.
Why did you bother doing that?" You know, anytime that I study anything, it's because I'm trying to figure out how this all works. And I don't care what it is in life that you're trying to figure out, whether it's horse racing, whether it's sports handicapping, whether it's, weather forecasting, whatever it is. If you know the right variables to look at, or at least you think you know the right variables to look at, and you put it to a test, even if the test fails, it wasn't a waste of time. It taught you something along the way. When I compile my database on a weekly basis during the regular season, I could automate that where I could grab the data and turn it into a Excel sheet, whatever, and then manipulate it for how I need it. But I would miss out on knowing who the next man up was on every team. And so building the database week by week during the regular season, first of all, by the end of the year, you've got the data ready to analyze for the whole season. But number two, and more important, you see who's playing how many snaps. You understand if player A gets hurt, is it player B, or are they bringing somebody else in? You can tell that. You can make an educated guess that's right 80% or more if you understand the data that you're looking at. And that's the key to all of the scientific method is having a theory, testing that theory. Even if your theory was wrong, you are now a smarter fantasy football player because you know what not to use. Sometimes what not to use tends to be as valuable. If I see a chart and I see, like, for instance, there was a chart on Twitter today showing explosive play percentage over the course of the regular season. And I see a 500 team towards the top, and I see the Chiefs at 15-1 for their starters at the bottom, then I know that data doesn't mean anything for real football. It might tell me something I need for fantasy football, but I know it doesn't mean anything for real football. Same way, if I would compile a database and come up with a statistical tool, and that statistical tool, based on whatever stat I'm looking at, maybe I'm looking at air yards, maybe I'm looking at yards after catch. And if that doesn't correlate to success in fantasy football, then I'm not going to use it for fantasy football. That's why all of my statistical tools and yours are all based on a weekly performance and what the real fantasy football points were. It's just common sense that if we're going to be chasing fantasy football production, Let's start with fantasy football production. Let's not get any cuter than that, because some of these exotic stats are great for real football, but they're not so good for fantasy football. And that's the big key. But testing a theory and having it be totally wrong, it wasn't a waste of time. It taught you something. And your goal in life, in anything you're trying to do, but especially in anything you're trying to forecast, your goal every year should be to have a better understanding of what to look for the next time you're in that situation. I don't care if it's you're playing Texas Hold'em. Learn from your bad beats, learn from your successes. If you're horse racing, understand the game better. You don't use $5,000 maiden claiming races to figure out how to handicap stakes races or vice versa. It won't work. You have to take the time, get into the data to understand the game you're trying to forecast, the problem you're trying to solve. And that's what we are doing using the scientific method.
Agree. I like it. So, Dennis, this is new data. This is in the database. I'm just going to kind of jaunt through it. This is be my first movie that I'm going to get around to. I don't know when, but I just said, well, let me get some data here. So the first thing I did was look at year and just look at total PPR point, the average. Okay, so that should take care of the weekly differences here from about 2021. I think we went to 18, but that is suspicious if you look across. But the worst year was 2017. So 2023 was almost as bad. So, last year we kind of bounced back a little bit. But anyway, the overall trend for the last, 11, 12 years is that it's kind of trying to tell us things have been going down or things were really high in 18, 19, and 20. So if you had really good success in those years, but not good recently, something was, different. So maybe whatever your method is, maybe works better when there's more scoring or something. I don't know. This is how I like to start. I'm not saying this means anything to me other than I like to see it and start thinking about, this kind of data here, Dennis. So this is the first thing. Got any comments? Or I've got more than we'll have time to talk about. I think I've got 15 slides. That's probably too much, but we can do some more next week or something.
So one of the things that I'm toying with my data,
Yeah,
is a concept both in weather forecasting or climate data or the grain markets. It's again any market that is changing, any situation that is changing where there's natural fluctuations.
mm-hmm.
There's usually a reason for that. And yes, you can have some huge changes. Look at, 2016, 9.4, all of a sudden dropped down to 8.95 and then up to 9.58. Instead of saying, oh, something crazy happened, maybe 2017 was just a weird year. But one of the things that I'm looking at using is, again, from my exposure to grain markets. In grain markets, just like in the stock market, they do this as well. They like to use 200-day moving averages. And you see the trend that is established. I'm wondering if a 5-year moving average wouldn't be an interesting way to look at this data? And the reason I'm suggesting that is because real things are happening in the NFL. Defenses are playing more two deep safety looks, which started about 2021-22 as teams were getting just beat up. And as they do more of these sort of defensive changes to counter what the offense did the year before, those are slow processes. Okay. There might be an abrupt change the first year, and then it might level out because teams are going to get smarter. So after 2 down years in 22 and 23, maybe that's why we saw an increase in 24, because teams were like, you know what? I see that this works against too deep. Maybe we're running more. Maybe we're throwing short passes. Whatever it is, the defense makes a change, the offense will make a change. And that's why I think that a moving average, I don't know if we have enough data here to do
Here's
it.
a
But I would be
two-period moving average. Here's 3. Here's 4. Again, notice here's 5.
interesting.
Fortunately, Dennis, Excel allows me to do moving average.
I love that. I absolutely love that because it does give you a little
Here's
bit of a
4.
challenge.
Yeah, I can do polynomial. I can do power. I can do linear, exponential. And I like polynomial. That's just my bias. And I can do a little bit extreme. So you start seeing that you can catch some interesting patterns, and it's almost following exactly like the data with, and that's probably overshooting and overfitting. So that's why I usually very conservative when I do just a 2-factor polynomial equation. And again, but I can do your moving average as well. So if you do a low 2-year moving average, I can do 7, 6. So back to 3. Here's 2. That may not be enough. Here's 3. And again, here's 4. And it's clear something was going on here by even 4 years.
Yeah.
And then here's 5-year. And again, you're starting to, it's smoothing out with 5-year, but clearly something happened at the end of that to where kind of went up a little bit, but down. So just about every way to look at it, something's going on
And
suspiciously. But what that is,
yeah, in looking at that 5-year,
oh, okay.
so again, my pattern recognition skills, you know, meteorologists sometimes see patterns where no pattern exists. We understand that. But when I look at this and I say, what is 2025 going to be like? I think it's more likely to even out because we stopped the decline.
Yes.
And I'm not so sure that we're going to go up from 927.
So we may be like a 2021 level, up a little bit.
Up a little bit, or maybe, 920, something like that. It's going to challenge that move because 22 and 23 were so low. But here's the difference between what
Here's
happened in
6-year average.
Yeah, in 2017, we did not hit the same direction in 2018.
Nope.
So in other words, 2017 we dropped off the wall, but if you look, we went back to increasing quickly. That would not have been my guess heading into 2018.
Yep.
But if you look at the moving average, it's like, okay, maybe that 17 was just a glitch. Maybe we're going to be okay.
Yeah, the smoothing of the moving average smooths that out.
Yeah.
But
So
it's still a little bit. So here's a 6 year, and it's still moving downward a little bit.
yeah, and that wouldn't be surprising that we went down. Maybe we're going to drop down to 915 or 920.
But if
I don't
somebody,
think we're going to go way up.
yeah, I'm just, again, if you've got a diary back to 2018, look at your ROI. Did you make a lot of money? I made a lot of money in
Oh yeah.
2015, probably my highest profit. And that's one of the best years of scoring. It just wasn't a lot of, there was a zero RB approach because a lot of injuries. And but the wide receiver, in other words, there was a lot of scoring. It just wasn't by the running backs because there were some injuries that year. And I was just on top of it with a lot of WRs, and I collected. So everything that I did, but that was my biggest year. And last year wasn't too bad, Dennis. But the years before I made money too. So uh, I don't remember 18, 19, and 20 actually. I remember 15 because I made so much money. And then I kind of remember the last 2 or 3 years, but I'm kind of blank. I need to go back and look, and I haven't done that yet. But if somebody's been wise enough, this kind of data might tell you something. Or if somebody hasn't won their league since 2021, maybe your methodology is keyed into high scoring in some way, you know, that you benefit whatever you're drafting or methods, whether it's RBs or whatever, something, if you won in 18, 19, and 20 and then lost the last 4 years, maybe that's telling you something. I don't know what it's telling you, but that's the kind of thing I would use this data for, would be, looking at kind of what I've been doing. I'm proud the fact that I know I've made money in these last 2 or 3 years, and we've had some of the lowest scoring. So I won't, Dennis, again, I may be overshooting this. I want to think if we do get at least the same or more, I'll still make money. I guess is what I'm hoping that's going to happen. But anyway, that's how you might think about another way to think about this. And I will point out,
And 20 and
yeah, go ahead.
20 and 21 were two of my most profitable years.
And that's very interesting.
So 22 and 23, I still made a profit, but I didn't make as much. And this year was not as good as 20 or 21 on the ROI, but it was better than the last 2 years.
Maybe there's something to that.
So I might do better when scoring is a little higher.
Yeah.
But again,
I don't know why.
That's 5 years worth. But here's the problem too, Professor, is over that time frame,
a lot of things change.
A lot of things change, including my strategies.
Yes.
So in 22,
you were changing multiple variables each year.
Correct. 2022, yes, that's exactly right. So 2022, when I had a bad year, I said, holy crap, let's look at what caused me to have bad years.
Yeah.
And it was I got eaten up at running back.
Yeah.
So 23 was the real debut of my better than zero. And that whole concept was invest in more running backs.
Yeah.
23 was better than 22, but not as good as 20 and 21. Yeah. So I stopped the slide, and then 24 had a much better year, and better than zero got refined. Well, better than zero is going to get refined again for 25. So if I go up and have my best year ever in 25, was it because of this? And scoring is way up. Is it because the scoring is way up, or is it because I have gotten progressively smarter in my strategy? So that's the problem you have sometimes in fantasy football, is more than one thing is changing at each time. And 20 and 21, I played more dynasty than anything else. And I had more dynasty upstarts because of COVID than anything else.
Yeah.
So did I just do better in my first year in dynasty? That's something that I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
But looking at the scoring data, it is very interesting to see if there's a secret sauce to figuring this out.
And so this data, again, what was the highest score of the whole year weekly? And notice 20 to 2024, even 2019,
Wow.
things changed. I mean, 2013 was amazing. I mean, if you're curious, I could go find who that was. It was probably a wide receiver, maybe Antonio Brown or Tyreek Hill. I
Ooh.
don't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, uh, so that's some really, so I was just plotting the average versus the top here, just for curiosity, just to see if there's some correlation in anything, and that was intriguing. But I can say that the top scoring has really improved, and I don't think any of those in the 50s are quarterbacks. I could check that. I think they're wide receivers, Dennis. I'm not sure they're.
I think you're correct.
I don't. There may be a running back or two in there, but not many. So there is something to the value of an amazing wide receiver that has a 3, 4 touchdown extreme week. They can just kill you, put the dagger in the heart of your enemies there. But anyway, I just wanted to plot that, Dennis, just to look. I wasn't really expecting anything, didn't really know what I was going to get, but you can easily find the max of the PPR. It's a way to do that. This was the ratio of the average versus the max. So I took those two numbers and divided that by the max, the average by the max, and got a ratio. Sometimes that levels it out. And this is the trend. Notice the trend is the same shape as this trend. So I'm not quite sure what that's telling me, but I could do moving average as well on that. If you're there's 2 year, there's 3, 4, 5. So that's something interesting that
Yeah, and
the scoring, the top scoring relative to the average has declined relative, even though the points have actually gone up versus the average, that ratio has changed. So I'm trying to figure out what that meant. So this is that data as well.
and this is the value of having a database that is well constructed, because you can check out a whole different relationship
Yeah.
without even changing your database.
No, I don't
It's
have to.
just the way you look at the data. And again, this reminds me of when I was working on a thing for San Francisco, and weather forecasting, and I had all these variables that I had been collecting, had no clue what any of them meant.
Yeah.
And I looked at temperature dew point spreads. I looked at, you know, what I called max spread, min spread during the day. I just looked at all these relationships that had, and I had no idea what any of them meant. And the data, the analysis of the data showed me that, if I looked at the data in a certain way, I got my percentage way up on how often that this data suggested the right outcome in the forecast. And that's, you had to meet certain criteria in order to be a day that was in play, and then certain months, different. But it was once you have the database, you can look at and test a lot of theories.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only something you can do if you build that database in a very good way that you can then look at the data and see trends, see things. Maybe it doesn't even explain much to you that you can use in a smarter way in 2025, but maybe it explains. Let's say you had a horrible year in whatever methodology you were using, and 2024 was a horrible year for you. You were profitable in every other year, and now all of a sudden you see the data cratered. The total points
Yep.
cratered the year that you did bad. I'm not going to quit playing if I think that the points are going to crater. Then I'm going to change my method, you know. But if it's just one of those fluke years that was a big down year, like that 2017 on the average, way down, and it bounced right back. Sometimes there's a peculiar thing. Maybe we just had a whole bunch of bad weather games that that dropped points. Maybe we just had a lot of injuries to key top players. I don't know what the answer is. But to see such a stark difference, then you can go that next step of investigating the whys. If you see that there's something different about that year, now let's try to find a reason for that data to do what it did. And here's the thing, it's an imperfect world in the NFL. It could be just one of those fluke seasons that doesn't have an explanation. And that's fine as well, because then you don't get too fired up over that one year. You go, yep, it's going to return to normal. Again, a player that has 10 or more touchdowns every year, all of a sudden has 3 touchdowns. He's still in his prime. Offense still looks good. Are you forecasting 3 touchdowns for him next year? No. You're figuring he's going to be closer to 10 because that's what he did the previous 4 years. Don't bet on the outlier if the outlier is explainable. Bet on the average, bet on the longer term average, because that will probably be that's the regression to the mean, and it can go in either direction. But the data, if you build the database like the professor has, it can answer a ton of questions for you.
This is blocks of the weekly scoring, counting in the different years. So last year, 2024, 2 weeks we had players, could have been the same player, I don't know the name, 50 plus, above 50, two. Then we had 14 that scored between 40 and 50, 17, 35 to 49, etc. So you can look, and then you can look at compared to 2023, and some interesting differences and things that you start seeing, and you just wonder, shifting of performances, and whatnot. Just I'm not quite sure what it's all there, but it is intriguing to me. I can look across and see what was what here, and I thought that was interesting.
I
The
think you have
data.
one label wrong though. I think you have one label wrong on this, Professor, because you go 30 to 35 and then 35 to 49. I think that should
This
probably
should
be
be
35 to
40.
39 looking at the data.
Yeah, it's probably is
Right, right.
40. I can change. See, I could go back and change that in the database. Yeah. So that's what that means. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Uh,
Very, very curious. See, we see patterns where there's
Yeah.
patterns. We
So
see patterns.
just looking now, realize that 21, 2, 3, and 4 had 18 weeks. So if you wonder where these numbers are a little higher, because they had another week to get numbers in these columns. So I would probably just
Yes.
compare the last 4 years to each other a little bit, you know. Uh, but I just wanted to see everybody. I was just curious about whatnot. So really, look at the 18, 19, and 20, and look at the 35 to 40 and 40 to 50. Look at the numbers versus last 2 3 years. Remember, if you go back to the data, 18, 19, and 20 had some of the best average overall across everybody. And that seems to be associated with a lot of performances in these buckets, whereas we don't see the actual, and they had 17 weeks and we had 18 weeks, Dennis. So there's I mean,
Wow.
yeah, you see what I'm saying? There's some interesting trends there you can spot where, I mean, look at these trends. If you just counted, say, what, 47, this would be, was that 40, 47? This would be 45. And look, 21, 21, 38, 40, 33, 31, 30, 34. I mean, these were insane years. So maybe whatever helped you, you were really good at getting production in these buckets. And I could see where you could really kick butt if you hadn't have a lot of these players, Dennis, that were ending up in a weekly bucket here. You could do really well. But this year, pretty lean. Especially this. Look at 17 versus 30, 29, 31, almost half. So for you to win this
Half in an
year,
additional game. Yeah.
yeah, an additional week. So there's some secrets here, Dennis. I hadn't fully figured it all out, but I think the big take home is when people expect sameness, I think that's wrong. You should never expect last week, this week, or last year, this year. When you look across the data like this, it's not the damn same numbers, Dennis. If every number was within one or two through each bucket, then I'd say, yeah, it's imagine that was the case. That'd be pretty damn predictable, wouldn't it? It would take an interesting player if everybody knew about everything, right? If it was a lot, let's call it efficiency of predictions. To me, this data says it's not is easily predicted because of the variation, and that's good. So I think,
And here's,
and I think that
yeah.
helps us because we're in the data, and so we can take advantage of the variation.
And here's where draft strategy might pay off because in 18, 19, and 20, you could have had just an average draft strategy and you are hitting on these big players
Yep.
left and right.
Yes.
But starting in 21 and going to the
A little
present
bit
day,
leaner. A little bit leaner.
if you have a strategy that gets you those elite guys
Yeah.
more often, and my better than zero does, because my better than zero says, hey, look, if everybody's going running back,
Yeah.
grab that elite wide receiver instead of an average running back. It seems so simple and natural and understandable, but that ain't how people draft. They see 8 running backs go off the board. They're more likely to take the 9th because they're fearful that running backs will run out
Yeah. Getting scarce.
than they are to pick that top wide receiver. They just get scared. they think, oh my goodness, and it happens even more in super flex drafts with quarterbacks.
Yes.
But last year, I won the league in FPPC where I didn't take a quarterback in the first 3 rounds. You know how much discipline that takes drafting.
It's like
You
it's like in the bull arenas, Dennis, they'll have these championships where these clowns have to stay in like a hula hoop ring, and if they leave, they lose the money. The last one in the ring
yeah.
while the bull's running around gets the money. And I've seen these fools, and here comes the bull and knocks one out. How much discipline is it for you to stay in that ring when the bull turns around and
Oh,
starts looking at you?
yeah, and that's the thing
That's
is
tough.
you need
Like
to
sitting in a
have
house
that.
and you smell
You
smoke. How long are you gonna sit in that house?
yeah, you
That's
you
crazy.
have to play smart. And in fantasy football, we ain't getting run over by a bull, but we're getting run over by owning the wrong quarterback in a super flex. And
Yeah,
it's never the player you drafted
yeah,
that costs you the game.
yeah,
It's the player you passed on.
yeah,
It's the points you lost
yeah,
because you didn't take the top elite guy no matter what position. And if you build your team with value,
yeah,
with the best value, you're going to be okay in these lean years. You're going to actually exceed or what your expectations were in these lean years, and you're going to be just as good in the good years, especially if you are really good, like last year. The Chase Browns, the Bucky Irvings, the Brian Thomases, those guys were on my teams more often
yeah,
because I was grabbing them about a half a round higher than consensus because they were just too good of a value. But you're going for the elite guys when they're available, and then you're drafting all upside late. That sets you up for success in either type of year is the key.
yeah. This data, I just asked the 12-year, the actual players in each bucket, and just did a percentage of the total. So for you to get to 50 plus players is 0.03%. In other words, Dennis,
Wow.
if you are good, and the next bucket is 0.2%, 0.45, 1%. And I grafted it. So I think if you can grab those elites, this is what the data, that's the reward, Dennis. That number. In other words, if you're able to grab the elites that continuously can hang in those buckets a lot longer than your opponents, you're going to win or you're going to have a great shot. And that's how rare it is. So there's what you're fighting against. Just by chance, everybody's trying to shoot, and there's not many ducks to shoot at. It's lean. And so people ask, well, why are you doing work in January? That's why. This data says why, Dennis, because I want to be able to grab some players in those top buckets there. And I know most likely there's not many of those players on my opponent's teams. If I get one or two and they get one or two, we're probably in the championship because there's probably not many more left. That kind of thing, assuming everybody's healthy, etc. So that's why I wanted to talk
and
about
and
that a little bit. I thought that was an interesting view. And
and that just inspired yet another study that I
yeah,
need to do
yeah,
because I want to look back. I want to look back and see how many of these guys that were in this 30 plus point
yeah, yeah. Weekly,
groups
weekly bucket. Yeah,
did my MVP index
put in there.
predict that better. In
Yeah,
other words, I have an MVP index over 100,
Yeah.
was my percentage of hitting these guys
Yeah.
much bigger? Because if it is, then I know I've got a good metric.
Yeah.
Or was my upside value better at catching these big guys?
I'll send you the Excel,
Those are,
and as soon as I'm done,
oh,
it's
this is going to
about
be fun.
close, and you're going to have so much fun. I mean, again, I'm going to
Mm.
send you everything, but you don't have to use it. You could just pull out the last 3 or 4 years, and you can add ADP, you can add MVP, best. If you have that, send it back to me. I'll do some magical stuff, and I'll have fun. But anyway,
And
you can have fun too. Yeah.
that's what makes this partnership between the two of us such a winner, folks, is the professor has some skill level that I don't have. And I have some pattern recognition skills that he doesn't have.
And
That's the difference
especially the
between,
young players. Dennis, I'm not going to, I mean, I know you're probably paying more attention to the Senior Bowl and the draft and all. And I think in my head, I don't have to worry. My compadre is soaking all that up. I don't have to spend my time pontificating about all these. I mean, I've seen all these metrics and points. They're already starting to grade these, players in the Shrine Bowl and all this other stuff, Dennis. And I know you're already there or you will be there. So I'm just clicking my feelers like, okay, Dennis, who do I need? Come about early August, then, about expo time, we're going to have all that figured out. And in our draft night, we're going to spank some more players, some more league mates here because, they're going to be just waking up and we're already. No, that's a pretty tough crew, Dennis. They're like you, they're ahead of the game, but they not. I doubt there's many professors in there doing this kind of slicing and dicing here. You know, uh,
no, and here's the thing when it comes to the young players, it's not that I'm great at evaluating player potential. What I'm good at spotting is opportunities.
yes.
There's guys like Matt FF Dynasty, John Laub,
Oh, those guys are
um,
good.
Thor, Thor Nystrom that are really good at, and that's just three. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Every time somebody will post something on older players or younger players, I should say.
Yeah.
Rich Dynasty Island is another guy. He's a from Great Britain. He does a great job. But every time I see these guys that have shown me year in year out that they're not just one trick pony, they understand the game. They understand what there is. The guys that I can't stand are the ones that look back at the metrics of the most successful players over the last 5 years
Hmm.
and they notice that 200 pounds is the magical formula for a running back
Right.
and they won't draft somebody who's 199 pounds.
Boy,
That shows
that's
such a
tough.
that shows such a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
For instance, Jamar Gibbs was all over him as a rookie. Okay. The reason people were saying he wouldn't make it is because he was too light, because he didn't hit that 200-pound minimum. He weighed in at the combine at 199. His playing weight in college was 195. Devon Achane, same thing. 185 in college, weighed in at 192 at the combine. Here's the amazing thing. Jamar Gibbs was still only 199 pounds last year. Devon Achane gained about 5 pounds of muscle. These guys are going to improve. They're also going to get better. They're going to get bigger over time. They're going to put on that key pound. But, I've seen it in what I do Monday through Friday. I've seen so many farmers. I'm not selling until corn gets to $5. It gets to $4.99. And then it drops to 475. And now all of a sudden they have to panic sell. because they need some money. Well, they lost 24 cents a bushel on their 10,000 bushels of corn because they were trying to milk that last penny. So those are the kinds of guys I ignore. The guys I like are the ones that seem to have a pretty good track record year in, year out. And I'll mark down their favorite 5 guys at each position. And then when I'm watching the combine, I'm like, okay, let's see what these guys can do. Nobody was really big on Nakua when he came out, right?
No.
He went really late in drafts. I saw that kid at the combine. I was like, who is this guy? He's big. He's fast. He's running this gauntlet drill so great. You know who ran the gauntlet drill really good last year? Ladd McConkey. I nailed Nakua because I liked him. I liked the way he ran the combine drill, the one that I look at, the gauntlet. It really challenges guys to have quick hands and quick reflexes. That's what you need in the NFL. Ladd McConkey ran a great gauntlet, and I still didn't buy in on him because I didn't like his college stats. How can you be right on one guy using the same tool and ignore it? That was bad process by me. Those are the kinds of mistakes you try to limit in fantasy football. But I'm not great at evaluating talent. What I'm good at is identifying opportunity. Bucky Irving had opportunity. Chase Brown had opportunity. The year before, Kyron Williams had opportunity. The guys that have opportunity are going to get a shot. I don't know if they're good enough or not, but I know they're going to get a shot. And at their ADPs, they were worth it. Every single one of them was worth it in those key years where they had their big breakout season. That's what I'm good at identifying. Brian Thomas Jr. I did like the fact that he was double-digit touchdown guys his final year. He had like 17 touchdowns his senior year or his junior year, his last year in college. I kind of like that kind of production. He had all the opportunity to be the WR1 on his team. He was an instant pick. But for every one of those on opportunity, you're going to fill some too. Polk with New England had all the opportunity in the world, didn't catch on in the NFL yet. So you can miss, you're going to swing and miss, even using the opportunity. But I'm swinging and missing on a guy whose ADP is really late in the draft. I don't want to swing and miss on a guy early in a draft. That's the key to success in fantasy football right there. And this data is going to help define that for us on guys that have a track record.
Yeah, I like it. This is looking at numbers of positional players in each buckets. So don't expect kickers to get you 25 to 30 points. The best, we've had 6 weeks out of the last 12 years. I don't know how many was that. That's 119. That's about 207 weeks. 6.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow.
So if you want an elite kicker, Dennis, those are the ones that are probably giving you a few weeks at 15 to 20. So if there's some strategy or something people can figure out, at least get you 10, right? Looks like everybody, it's kind of peaking at 5 to 10. So I want to be above that. So I think weekly, I'm going to start trying to improve my kicking streaming a little bit, trying to have that 10 to 15 number. I don't, try to figure out how can I predict those guys. So that's just what I had this. Quarterbacks, you can see.
And I am gonna calculate MVP on kickers.
Yeah.
Using the same statistics,
Yeah.
and because that will catch those 10-point games.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. And then quarterbacks, you can see running backs and wide receivers. Pretty rare to be in the 50 plus and so forth. So you look at the total numbers. And so the below is there's percentage. And what that is, I took the whole bucket and how many were kickers in the 0 to 5? How many quarterbacks, RBs, tight ends,
Wow.
and wide receivers? So in the 50 plus bucket, nine out of what's that, 16? So 56% were wide receivers, 48,
Wow.
44, 38. It is clear, Dennis, that if I know there's some other considerations, but there's a bias to the wide receivers that way. Over the year, again, this is not last year, this is over the 12 years. Look at the tight ends. If you can figure out who's going to get you 30 plus points, that's happened, what is that, 40, 50, about 60 times out of 207 or 8 weeks. If you could figure those out, if you can get somebody like the Kelsey to get you some nice weeks, Dennis, you have such an advantage. So there's a couple ways to look at this data, folks, kind of the pro and the con a little bit, but I think it shows you expectations. So if you're drafting, say, I don't know if we're going to draft Tucker anymore. He may be in some legal hot water, Dennis. I don't know if you've seen the latest. I'm not going to bring it up, but it's out there.
Oh yeah. He might be kicking with the
For
Cleveland Browns
Cleveland. Yeah,
next
yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying, I've seen kickers going in the 13th round, 14th round out of 20, and I'm thinking, you're
Yeah.
telling me that your kicker is going to give me, how many weeks in each bucket? Come on, man. I can wait into the 19th round and probably get a good kicker. So that doesn't make sense to me, that kind of thing. But something like a tight end, if you can get you 7, 8 weeks like a Kelsey, it may be worth that. We were wrong this year, but you know, maybe maybe I'm not sure he's going to play next year. Who knows? But that this data should inspire more questions and thinking, data. So sometimes data like this is not for me to have answers. It's for me to think about extra questions. So there's multiple types of data charts. This is one of those that inspires strategy, thinking, just what's going on a little bit. But you got to have this kind of data too. And I think a lot of that is missed. Folks, if the place you're paying money for is not giving you these big top-down overviews of things, how do you know what's real and what's not? I mean, you just relied on them to cut the wood. Imagine they're cutting, pine trees for firewood instead of oak. I mean, come on. But if you don't know, they just say it's wood, okay. You got to be more thoughtful about things. And that's what I've seen, Dennis, on Twitter. There's not a context, a data context that makes sense. You and I are coming from a weekly perspective, consistency. I know there's folks out there, consistency, and that's great. No offense to anybody out there, even them, the big. I think we're taking it and running with it. I hadn't seen anybody doing our level on consistency. I know there's, again, what I've seen. I don't know behind paywalls. But anyway, Dennis, this is one of those that should allow you to think a little bit. So the downside of wide
And I'm
receivers is there's a lot of them at 0 to 5. You know what I'm saying? There's a
yes.
lot there
Yeah.
too. So that's the flip side of some of this to think about. Go ahead.
What'll be interesting to look at, and this has just inspired another data study, as I add ages of players to this. I'm
Okay.
interested to see, is there a younger age bias
Yep.
to these big games? Because that could
Yep.
be an indication of when we get off of a player
In Dynasty
and
for sure.
in Dynasty for sure, but even
In
this year
redraft.
drafting,
Yeah.
we saw a downturn
On Kelsey.
between 22 and 23 with Kelsey.
Yep.
And we bet on him returning to
He
form.
didn't.
He didn't.
He stayed the
And
same.
was that an age thing?
Well, we got 5
Can,
weeks, Dennis, which compared to a lot of
we
tight
still
ends,
got
not
better.
bad. Not
We
bad.
still did okay. We still did
But
okay.
I
But
was
if we had,
greedy. I wanted 10.
but what if we had taken Barkley
Oh, yeah. Instead.
right there,
Yeah.
or taken a top wide receiver there,
Yes.
that was still on the board,
Yes.
then we
With
could have
Henry and then
taken,
having
taken
Evans or
Kittle or
yeah, Kittle or
yes,
yes.
taking Kittle or somebody like that. That would have improved our team. So here's the thing: is we had a very good draft at draft night out. Our goal for 25 isn't to have another very good night; it's to have a better night. And this kind of data should clue us in
Yep.
to that situation. Well, Professor,
Yeah, I
lots
think
of
we've
data to
we've
chew on.
we've run out of time here. I know I got too much to talk about, but
Lots of data to chew on,
yeah.
and we will be chewing on it each and every week. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com and check out all of the professor's video
It's
lessons.
coming. I got it. I got the data. I just
And
hadn't done it
this
all.
this video lesson will be coming, but look at
Yeah,
some of
it'll
the
be
old stuff that he's done as well.
oh yeah.
Look at some of the data studies that are over there, and come up with your own ideas, and feel free to share those with
Oh
us.
yeah, please. Yeah.
And
Always
also
looking for
remember
collaborators. Yeah.
remember to jump on the Chiefs bandwagon and pay your fee to the Referees Association. We want this three-peat. And then head on back here next week, of course, for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
I'm collecting Saints tears even up to the Super Bowl, so I know. Anyway, get to work, folks. Got my little tear jar, Dennis, and I cry.
Tear jars. I love
Yeah.
it.
Hey, yeah, you need to look at that. They actually have a glass, and
Oh,
it's
God, that's funny.
actually Victorians started that. They were encouraged
Oh, wow.
at funerals in Victorian England to collect tears.
Oh, that's
I don't know
that's
what they were going to do, but anyway,
hilarious.
they actually had a jar. I saw it on Antiques Roadshow, the English edition. We get it on
Yep,
our
that's
free. We
hilarious.
watched, and this dude had this little box, and he flips it open. There's this weird looking jar, and guys, I don't know what this is. And
Oh,
guy said he
God,
put it up to his
that's
eye and said, "This is a
hilarious.
collect your tears in Victoria, England." So that I remind yes,
That's
yeah, the Saints fans need
hilarious.
that. We need put a bag over our head, stick the jar underneath there. The ain'ts kind of get all that frustration going. Uh, we could cry a swamp full of tears, Dennis. Swamp full.
Yeah, we ain't had anything but happy tears in
Yeah,
the
you
case of
guys,
Chiefs.
tears
We're
of
like
joy. Come on,
we're
man.
we're like we're like Chris Jones crying before a game. You know he's gonna win.
Yeah, yeah, that's
If he's
crazy.
into it that much, it's
Yeah,
gonna be a
it's
big game.
ridiculous, ridiculous. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording in case we see something bad here.